Hey everyone, Andrew here, and yeah, this will be an interesting one. So, I'm gonna leave a little backstory on how this book kind of fell into my lap and what led to it. So, those of you that know me or kind of met me, three and a half years ago, I started a book club with some friends at work, and called the Bayou Book Club. And it was just, a bunch of us getting together and talking about books that became films and wanting to read those books and other stuff of that nature. And I randomly started the club as a result. And the first month that we did it, I decided I would just assign one because it was Christmas and I just wanted to pick a short, quick book that we could get used to the concept, and then we would vote for January. So I picked the book known as Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist by David Leviathan and Rachel Cohn, and which is a really cute, fun couple getting together in high school type of thing, and it's a really good book. I like it. And the second month we did the vote, and the book that won the vote for that was Looking for Alaska by John Green, which is still the worst book I've ever read for the club. And there's books that I refused to finish because I didn't think they were that good. And I would read those through all the way multiple times before I would ever touch Looking for Alaska again. And I could go on a long diatribe of stuff that I disliked about Looking for Alaska. For mostly, I'll just say it's simple writing, a little pretentious, and the more you think about it, the more it unravels. And then I came across this book that was by one of the authors of Nick and Nora, David Leviathan, and by John Green. And I figured, well, maybe I should give that a look. Because John Green is a very popular writer. He's on the top 100 teen books of all time for every single book he's written, for whatever reason. And I'm like, okay, I try to give authors more than one try, because sometimes it's just my mindset or just the specific context of this book isn't good. So I decided to read the one that they both wrote, because the worst comes to worst, I'll like half of it. That book, of course, was Will Grayson, Will Grayson. I definitely have some stuff to say about this one, because, oh my goodness, this book. So, Will Grayson and Will Grayson are about two boys that both share the name Will Grayson and live within driving distance of each other in Illinois. And basically, the difference between them is one is shy and antisocial and straight, and the other one is depressed and very antisocial and gay. And to keep it straight between which of these two I'm going to be talking about, I will try my best to refer to the straight one as Grayson and the gay one as Will. So we start out with Grayson, who has just lost his newest group of friends because he wrote a letter to the newspaper, the school newspaper, defending his old best friend, Tiny Cooper. Tiny Cooper is described as being not the gayest man in the world or the largest man in the world, but probably the largest gay man in the world. One of those people who is super happy and super full of life and is constantly falling in love. And every single boy he meets that he has a crush on, he's instantly in love with. And then they break his heart and he just is sad for a moment and then goes on to the next one. Doesn't really think about too many people besides himself, talks incessantly about himself, but thinks he is doing great good for the rest of the world by doing so. And a bunch of the parents got mad about having a gay kid on the football team. And Grayson wrote a letter saying, why that's BS and that they should not do that, and then signed his name to it. And yeah, his new group of friends immediately dropped him. And now the only person who's his friend is Tiny Cooper. And Tiny Cooper is definitely one of the most flamboyant written characters I've ever come across. And he has this strong desire, and he wants to put on, basically, he wants to help lead his straight gay alliance group in doing a musical for the school. And it will be a musical that he wrote called Tiny Dancer. Yeah, and it's literally about his life and his best friend, Gil Grayson. And, which, of course, Will Grayson hates because it's my name, just with the first letters switched. And basically, like, Grayson is now stuck hanging out with Tiny and their friends from the Straight Gay Alliance, including a girl named Jane. And Grayson really isn't attracted to her, but there's something about her. He kind of wants to know if she's straight or not, but can't imagine falling in love with someone like that. Tiny's like, oh, we should go to the concert this weekend because they're going to play your favorite band. And the name of this band is Neutral Milk Hospital. That is the worst name I've ever heard for a band. And I've come across some pretty bad ones. There are some really bizarre ones out there. Just sounds like that's literally like someone put in a word scramble and just pulled out 3 random words and like, that's our name, Neutral Milk Hospital. So the club that they go to is 21 and older, and Grayson doesn't have a fake ID. So Tiny creates a distraction by having one of his friends punch him in the face, and Jane and Grayson manage to sneak in. Turns out that this isn't the band that they're expecting, that it's another band that's just using it as a cheap way to get people into it, or to come see the show, which is exactly what happened in Nick Nor and the Infinite Playlist movie. Literally. Exactly. But they decide to do. They basically go out and have some stuff, and Tiny ends up getting very drunk and sad because his most recent boyfriend broke up with him. Basically, his most recent boyfriend he was dating for maybe 24 hours. Basically, Jane and Grayson managed to get Tiny back into his house. He collapses on the floor, and he has snot bubbles coming out of his nose, and Grayson is like, I'm afraid he's going to choke. I need to clear his airway. And he remembers a thing his dad told him when he was a kid, which is, you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can never pick your friend's nose. And Grayson's like, I am not doing that. I am not picking his nose. And that's where that chapter ends. And we do get a clear definitive answer by the end of the book whether he did, but you can tell right away what he actually did. We cut over to Will, who is extremely clinically depressed, and first things out of his mouth is basically ignoring and being rude to his mom. His mom's like, oh, eat your food. He refuses. It's like, oh, you all ready for school? He doesn't answer. She's like, oh, have a wonderful day. He slams the door in her face. He goes to school, meets up with his friend Mora, who he's only friends with due to circumstance. He doesn't particularly like her in any way, but puts up with her mostly for morning coffee, kind of. They basically, this Will hates everyone and everything about his life. He's extremely depressed. The only thing in the world that he remotely cares about is this boy named Isaac, who he has never met. He's only met him through chat room online. he went through and looked him up on Facebook and all that stuff. But it's like it's all he looks forward to during the day, and he goes straight home and instant messages Isaac, and they have conversations. Will is deeply falling in love with Isaac, even though he's never met him. And it's like, we need to get together and meet and do so. We need to actually see each other. And that's roughly where that first chapter ends. And I'll be 100% honest. By the end of the second chapter, I wanted to burn this book. That I hated Will. I didn't like Grayson that much. He had some moments, but it was like, I didn't really like him. I didn't like Tiny. Jane was alright, but Jane didn't have anything. I didn't even realize she was if she was important or not by this point. And that Will, I hated him for a couple of reasons. For one, first thing we introduced to him in is him ignoring and insulting his mother. And I knew right away he was a single kid by a single parent who was working her butt off to keep him fed and happy, and he was complaining about the fact that she couldn't earn enough money to get him a car. And as a single kid raised by a single parent, you don't do that. Your parent is literally doing everything for you. They are literally doing everything in their power to keep you fed and somewhat happy. You do not be to them. The second thing that pissed me off, and this pissed me off every single time it pops up in the book, is the way every single one of Will's chapters is written. Because every single one of Will's chapters is written badly. For starters, the entire chapter is in lowercase. Everything. Every single self-referencing I, every single person's name, everything. Drove me nuts, especially every time you come across the name Will, because I had to remind myself that because it's just because it's lowercase does not mean it's last will and testament, but a person. Second is every time there's a conversation, it's not the way a book would do it within quotes and stuff. It was written as a screenplay, like, here's Maura, here's what she said, here's Will, here's what he said. And as someone who is trying to be a writer and has studied writing and has done some things in this nature, no. These are the marks of an amateur. These are the marks of a hacky amateur who doesn't know how to do good writing. And before y'all get on me, it's like, oh no, it's just trying to be the character, to show off the character. The character sees himself in lowercase, so everything's in lowercase. Screw that. No. I've read enough books, and others people will be like, oh, so you can easily tell which person's talking in which part. So you know when it's a Will chapter and a Grayson chapter. Again, no. I've read enough romance, I've read enough books with multiple lead protagonists that I 100% know you do not do it this way. You do it through the use of language, the way the characters think, the way the characters speak. You do not do it through bad formatting. And I could forgive this. I could forgive this if this was journals. If this was presented to me as, this is Will Grayson writing about his day in his journal. Then you can do all lowercase. I had a book that I absolutely loved that did this style of writing called Cruddy. And I will definitely do a video on that one. I need to reread it because that one deserves the full reread and attention that it needs to give it. Cruddy used different simplistic writing styles of someone who is uneducated, but it is presented as a story written by the author. It is literally the main character writing to the family and explaining to them, this is what led to these events that created the story. So doing it in that style is 100% okay. Doing it as a regular book, and you're just choosing every other chapter to be 100% lowercase and in bad formatting, is the sign of an arrogant amateur. Had the two authors that have been a part of this not been involved with this book would have never gotten signed. No one would have okayed this. I'm still having a hard time figuring out why in the world someone would allow them to write like this. Because every single thing that I've ever read and had seen, it's like, you do not write like this. This is not okay. And I really wished that I really wanted to believe that John Green wrote these chapters. Because I dislike that author so much. I wanted to believe that he is the hack, that he is the one choosing to be this. And then I get to the end of the book and I read through them interviewing each other, and it turns out it's David Leviathan's chapters. And that the somewhat okay first chapter, Grayson chapters, are all John Green. That makes me mad. I'm still kind of like, I want to hate John Green, and that was a perfect excuse to hate John Green. Now I just have Looking for Alaska as my explanation. So yeah, I almost put the book down. I didn't really want to read it anymore, but I'm stubborn. I pushed through. But I was like, I'm like, if they had kept it the same way, if that Will had not done a lot of things to pick himself up, I would have stopped reading very early on. So we cut back to Grayson. So Grayson goes to school the next day, and Tiny's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get funding for the play. We're going to do this. Also, hey, there's a concert going on this weekend. You should come with us. And it's like, is it 21 and over? Yeah. It's like, I don't have a fake ID. And Tiny's like, talk to Jane. Jane knows a guy, $100, can get you a fake ID. So he talks to Jane and rides over with her to her ID maker. And he's starting to realize like little things about her that he likes her taste in music, the way she talks to him, the way the way she tells jokes, things of that nature. And he's starting to slowly come around to thinking about her, but he also is like, no, I don't have any interest in her. And they stop the car, and she like, Tiny kept saying you like interested and you had these feelings for me, and he's like, what are you talking about? And she leans in to kiss him, and he does the teenager, nope, don't want that. And she's like, realizes it and gets red faced, and it's like, you know what? Sorry, I didn't mean that. Let's pretend that never happened and just go back to being whatever we are. And go and get his fake ID, and Will, Tiny, and Jane are going to go to the concert the weekend. They get to the bar where it is, and turns out that the ID maker put the wrong date, so it says he's 20, not 21. Jane and Tiny go into the bar. Will stays outside and is like, well, now what? And he sees across the way this adult bookstore. And he's like, all right, I guess. Not really interested, but goes in there and he's like, okay, I'm going to find the weirdest thing in here I can find. I'm going to buy it, and I'm just going to show it to Tiny and Jane and be like, look at the dumb thing I found. I went on an adventure, type of thing. And he goes up, he finds this weird magazine that I think all Spanish or something, goes to the front desk to pay for it. She's like, oh, you have an ID? Shows the ID. Like, all right, how do you want to pay? Pulls out the credit card, and he's like, are you Will Grayson? He's like, yes. Why does your ID not match your credit card? Cut to Will, who now has a set date that him and Isaac are going to meet. A few nights before he meets, Maura comes over to his place, and he's like, hey, I need your help. I have mathletes this weekend, but I need to go do this thing with my family. Can you cover for me, please? And she's like, you know you can tell me the truth. I'm here for you. I just want you to tell me the truth. And Will refuses to tell her the truth because he believes her. He doesn't want her to know. It's not that he doesn't accept the fact that he is homosexual or into guys, and he just doesn't want her to know because besides the fact that he doesn't want anyone to know, but it's also just she's a manipulative person, and he doesn't want to give her the drama of it and give her any excuse to be more about it. So he lies and tells her that no, everything's fine. I'm just telling you the truth. You are important to me. We are friends. I'm telling you the truth. He So he leaves and heads into Chicago and goes to the address that Isaac gave him, and it's this adult bookstore. And goes inside and is waiting, and hears someone call his name, and he's like, "Yes?" It's like, and the cashier's like, "What?" It's like, "You said Will Grayson. That's my name." And the other Will Grayson turns around and is like, "I'm also Will Grayson." Will and Grayson go out to the street, and Will gets a phone call from Maura, and he's like, "Oh, hey, how's the mathletes going? Did you guys win?" And she's like, "Oh, it went fine." Or it's like, "How's Chicago?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Are you at the porn store?" And she's like, What are you?" She's like, "I know. I've known all along." And Will slowly realizes that there is no Isaac. But he had a Facebook page. I looked it up, and it's like, that was all me. It was all Mora. And way to take a character I hated and make him sympathetic, because you literally just presented Mora as Hitler. Okay, maybe not Hitler, but Mussolini. Like, the most evil we can come up with. It's like, just the worst thing you could do to a human being. Because they'd been talking, Isaac and Will had been talking for a year. Freaking year she'd been doing this, pretending to be a boy to catch her friend in a lie thing. And Will, of course, is devastated and freaks out, and he's like, "I will never speak to you again. You're dead to me." And hangs up the phone and just has a full-on sadness crash down. And Grayson goes over to him and is sitting with him, and then Tiny and Jane come out, and Grayson goes over and he's like, "Oh, I want to introduce you. Come on here." It's like, "Okay, Tiny Cooper, Will Grayson. Will Grayson, Tiny Cooper." And Tiny is just this big, bulking giant of a kid, and is just smiling brightly, like, "Oh, hello, handsome." And he sits with Will and is just supportive and just listening to him and just being the shoulder to cry on type of thing, and is like talking to him and talking about his play that he wants to do and how it's the story of his life and about, you know, struggles of being gay and this big and all this stuff. And listening and being around Tiny helps stabilize Will and helps him it doesn't bring him out of depression, but it keeps him from falling into dangerous depression. And by the end of this, they are dating. And I'm like, I really liked it. That was an interesting part of it. And I was expecting at this point that there were going to be a bunch of things where this Tiny was texting and saying things about Will Grayson, and people were going to mishear it and think he was talking about the straight Will Grayson. But that didn't really ever come up again, or at all. So I applaud them for not taking the easy jokes. Meanwhile, Grayson and Jane have gone back to her. He's taken her back to her house, and is talking to her, and he's like, "Okay, can we have a few moments where we can be 100% truthful to each other?" She's like, "Okay," and he's like, "I like you. I sort of found that myself really liking you and wanting to see you and be around you, and it's really confusing because I kind of do and I kind of don't, and I don't understand how I feel about it, but I do know that I enjoy being around you and I want to see where this could possibly go. And she's like, oh, yeah, I have a boyfriend. He's like, oh. Well, she's like, well, he's an ex-boyfriend, but yeah, we might be getting back together because he requested this song to be played for me, and it's my favorite song, which turned out this was actually Will Grayson. This was Grayson's doing, because that band that they love, Neutral Milk Hospital, still the dumbest name ever, did a song that he doesn't like, but she loved, so he requested it for her. And the other guy apparently took. She assumed it's the other guy, and she's like, I don't know where I stand with him, but I kind of want to be with someone who truly likes me versus someone who kind of likes me, kind of doesn't. And then they kiss. And it's like, well, that's confusing, but very high school at the same time. And Grayson goes to school the next day, and she left a note for him in his locker, because and it was like basically like, you should keep your numbers better hidden so people don't find out, do things to you. And he basically saw her do her numbers for her locker, so he leaves a note for her in that, which she immediately thinks was written by the other guy, because no one else knows my locker number but my ex. And he doesn't say anything about it being him. And then he finds Tiny setting up sign-in sheets for his musical Tiny Dancer. And Will Grayson's like, okay, is this the same play that I read? More or less. So it's basically your life with your friend Gil Rayson. You need to change that name. And Tiny's like, I'm not going to change the name. It's like, please change the name. It's like, fine. We'll call him Phil Rayson. Does that make you happy? And Grayson's like, no. Okay, fine. If we're going to do this and you're going to put me in the play, I get to pick who plays me. And Tiny's like, fine, you can have a say. Come to the auditions and tonight, and you can have your say on who gets to play you. Fine. So it's Tiny, Grayson, and Jane at the auditions, and Tiny just introduces everyone and is like, all right, welcome to the auditions. You're all going to sing because this is a musical. You can sing anything you want. There's only one rule here. Tiny hates Somewhere Over the Rainbow. This becomes important. Okay, it doesn't become important, but at least it's something funny. Anyway, they do the auditions. Most of the people suck, but they find the people who will be playing them. Of course, Tiny is taking the lead himself. He's also directing and writing and catering and basically doing everything. Cut to Will, who is still super depressed and miserable, but kind of in a better state than he was last night. And him and Tiny have been texting and IMing the entire time. Like, basically, like, within the course of, like, a 6-hour day, wrote, like, 150 texts or something. It's a lot. And he goes to school, and Maura's there, and Maura wants to talk to him, and he's literally shutting her out, doesn't say a word to her, and just walks past her. Goes to his lunch table with his friends from the mathletes, and they're like, oh, how was your trip into Chicago on Saturday? And he's like, it could have been, it turned out all right by the end, but yeah, I need to let you guys know, I'm gay, and I have a boyfriend now. And they're like, oh, this is awkward, but all right. And he's like, yeah, I kind of just needed to get that out and just let it be known, because Will ends up meeting this boy named Gideon, who is also homosexual and is very, like, proud of that Will was able to say it, and they become instant best friends. So Grayson keeps getting mad at Tiny for different things of him saying things, and he keeps getting mad about the play, and he gets mad and storms off and expects Tiny to come after him because Tiny usually would, but doesn't. So he goes home depressed, and Jane shows up, and Jane is like, okay, what's my locker combination? And he tells her the three numbers, and she's like, why in the world didn't you tell me it was you that left the note? Why in the world did you let me think it was that guy? And he's like, you have a boyfriend. And she's like, had a boyfriend. It's like, how did you know? It's like, well, I figured it out when I went to see him for lunch, and he wouldn't shut up about himself and about going competing in the Olympics in 2016. Which, side note, I really dislike the fact that they threw that in there because that instantly dates this book. Being in 2018 and having read this book, I could have guessed that it took place anytime after the 2000s, after text messaging and IMing became a big thing. Giving it a specific date really limits the lifespan of a book like this. But I also kind of understand why they did it, because the kids that are teenagers now, want to read the books that are set in their time frame. Yeah, it is one of those things that I've seen a bunch of stuff where they talk about this, and it's like, there's some stories that need to be treated as if they could take place at any point, because that gives it a level of timelessness. Whereas if you make a movie that has a very specific message or a very specific time frame, it limits the amount of people that are going to connect to it and care. Grayson and Jane decide that they need to figure out what's going on. They use Schrodinger's cat as a metaphor for their relationship and things. Like, Schrodinger's cat is the idea that if you put a cat in a box and leave it there for a long period of time, as long as that box remains closed, that cat is both alive and dead at the same time, because either could be true. So both are true. And it isn't until you open the box that you can know one way or the other. And they're like, well, it's like, is that our relationship? Are we the cat? And it's like, is that you? Are you the cat? And she's like, no, you and I are the scientists. Our relationship is the cat. And we have to open this up and see what it is. What, be good or bad. And so they agree that they'll start dating. And they have this conversation again a little bit later about whether or not they're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend. And it's literally almost the same conversation. And it's just like, yep, yeah, they are. And it's fine. I actually like them as a couple. They're kind of cute. I dislike the fact of how it started, because it's so, like, I have no interest in her whatsoever, to literally being super into her within the course of... I think the whole story takes place in less than a week. Maybe 2 weeks. But it's really fast. So, Will has Tiny come over for dinner to meet his mom, and realizes that Tiny Cooper's from a rich family, and that starts making him question whether or not this relationship would work. He can't fully understand why in the world someone like Tiny would want to be with someone like him, because he is so dark and so depressed and so self-hating that it's literally impossible for him to imagine someone even remotely liking him. Then 2 days later, Tiny calls Will, and he's like, I'm taking a personal day from school. I need some time to think. I need to see you. I'm already in the car. I'm heading to your school. And Will's like, I think you're thinking of the wrong Will Grayson. I'm not the one you should be coming to, because I literally can't help you with that. And it's like, but he shows up, and Will and Tiny go around his school, and he introduces Tiny to his friends and his new gay best friend, and Tiny's like, oh, that's really nice. So which one's Mora? And Will points her out, and Tiny's like, okay. And he gets up and he walks across to Mora, and Will's beside him like, don't do this. Don't talk to her. We're ignoring her. And like, Tiny just goes up to Mora, and he's like, so you're Mora, right? Hi, I'm Tiny. I'm this one's boyfriend. I want to thank you for being a huge, major witch and doing something so horrible to him, because if you had not, I would have never met him. So I do thank you for that. Will's like, basically drags him out of there, and they end up in the backyard of one of the neighbors sitting on the swings, and Will's like, this isn't working, we can't do this. And Tiny's like, why do you all say that to me? And you start to get this idea that's like, this is the trend that Tiny has. Like, every single time he falls in love, every single one of them breaks his heart. And you start to realize that this person who's been portrayed extremely giddily happy, like the most flamboyantly happy person that we've read in this entire series, is actually like using it as a little bit of a cover to hide a level of darkness within himself. And he acknowledges that he has those moments, but Will, because of the depression and because of the situation he's in, it's like, yeah, your level's here, mine's 10 feet under the ground of depression. You don't know what true depression is. And yeah, no, he might be right. It's hard to say. It's different for everybody. As someone with depression myself, I've been thankful that I'm a functioning depressive. I can literally go out and do the things I need to do even if I'm unhappy. But I can also sit at home and have very dark thoughts and moments where I just don't want to get out of bed. I understand it, and Will would look at me and say, "You don't understand nothing," and I would say, "Shut up," because you don't understand nothing. Will says, "We can't do this anymore," and Tiny leaves, and they're broken up, and Will falls into very deep depression. But it's not as deep as with Mora. It's I'm sad this couldn't have worked out, but I now know what it's like to be in love, and he's, it's not as destructive as it was before. He starts to come out of it on his own. Cut back to Grayson, who asks Tiny how things are going with Will. Tiny says, "Oh, fine," even though this is after they've broken up. Finds out from Jane that Tiny and Will broke up, is very pissed at Tiny for not telling him the truth, and realizes that their friendship is basically done at this point because his friend is lying to him. They can't have a relationship built on this. So Will proceeds to write this email that's all about how, he's sad that their friendship is ending, but this is the way it goes, and has to deal with this. Now, we see this email. It's written entirely in lowercase, and that's fine, because it's an email within the story, meaning it was actually written by the person telling the story, so lowercase is fine, as opposed to every chapter that the other Will's in. Just wanted to say that, get that out, because this, sadly, John Green showed David Leviathan how you actually write this type of story, and that pisses me off, because I really don't want to like John Green, but he's making me like him with these chapters. Will doesn't write the letter. Tiny finally is like, "So you heard?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah. Can we talk? I need my friend right now." And Grayson's like, "I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to be your second choice anymore." And he leaves and runs into Jane. And Jane, this is when they have that question of like, "Am I your girlfriend or not? Because we need to know." And Grayson has an epiphany, and he's like, "Oh, yes, no, you are my girlfriend. I'm so happy. I really want that. Also, I need to tell you, I fucking love Tiny Cooper. I love Tiny Cooper. And he is my number one, and I'm really sorry to tell you right now that he will always be my number one." And that's a really interesting thing to say to your brand new girlfriend of, "I love you. I really want us to be a couple. You'll always be number two." But at the same time, it reminds me of Corey and Sean from Boy Meets World. Because Corey fell in love with Topanga, but you knew that that the second anything happened to Corey, he would run to Sean and not Topanga first. So that brought me back to high school. So I was kind of happy about that. Which, yeah. And she's like, "All right, well, go tell him." And Grayson goes and leaves and finds Tiny at this. They find the baseball field in the dugout where they used to play Little League, and where they'd met and became friends. It's like he tells Tiny Cooper, "Is like, I truly, deeply love you. I also hate you. You pissed me off so much. You're the most annoying person in my life, but I also love that about you, and you are my best friend. And they reconcile, and he's like, I understand that you are sad and unhappy about the way things went with the other Will Grayson, and I know this play is stressing you out, and if there's anything that I can do to help, I want to help you out. And Tiny's like, actually, I have this, and hands him a letter. And the letter basically just flat out says, that's like, Will Grayson, thank you for your appreciation for helping with the play. Can you please do the help with the costume changes between the acts? We also need a set list for the pre-show music. Please have it be a combination of punk, pop, and musicals. Signed, Tiny Cooper. Because, of course, Tiny Cooper prepped and had a letter asking for this help without actually asking, just expects it. Cutting back to Will. Will decides it's like, okay, I need to do something for Tiny Cooper. I need to show him that he was important to me, that I do appreciate him, that he is someone who changed my life, even for the brief amount of time that we were together. And his friend Gideon's like, all right, I'll help you with that. I'll drive the car. Now you just go talk to Maura first, and we can go. And Will's like, I don't want to talk to Maura. I'm not doing that. And Gideon's like, yes, you are. Go do it. So Will goes, talks to Maura, and he's like, okay, so what you did to me was absolutely horrible. But I should have been honest with you in the first place and told you that I didn't feel about you the same way you felt about me and that I was gay. And so I acknowledge that I'm also partially to blame for this. I am also at fault here. And she's like, but you did care about me. I was important to you. It's like, you loved Isaac. And he's like, yes, but Isaac wasn't real. He never was. And Maura's like, Isaac loved you too. And it's this understanding that it's like, they will never be what they were. It's impossible. But you understand what motivated her. And Will figures out as he's writing with Gideon to this show, and he just has this calmness about being with this person. This is a person that he can be his true self with, both the light and the dark, this sense of appreciation and acceptance. And it's like, that's what Maura wanted from Will, but he was unable to ever give her. Got to Grayson. Grayson and Jane came up with the playlist for the night show, which is pop punk, and it's like, okay, for the musical side, they chose Somewhere Over the Rainbow 9 times, including a reggae cover. And the music starts playing, and Tiny hears that, and is like, is that Somewhere Over the Rainbow? And Will Grayson's like, yes, it is. And Tiny Cooper just screams, Tiny Cooper hates Somewhere Over the Rainbow! And I had to drop the book. I was laughing so hard. I'm like, oh, I'd completely forgotten by that point that he'd said that. I was rolling in the aisle. I was laughing so hard. Yeah. Basically, and before the show, Tiny Cooper got very sick due to food poisoning, although he chugs a bottle of Pepto-Bismol and it's fine for the show. He does the show, and Grayson realizes that the show is literally their lives, down to full details that he didn't even remember. And how much of a message of friendship this is. And gets a message from Will, and Will tells Grayson, hey, I have this plan to make this up to Tony. I need your help with this. I need you to get some people to do this with me. And he's like, okay. So they get to the end of the show, and the spotlight is on Tiny as he finishes the last part. And Will gets up from his seat and shouts into the audience, my name is Will Grayson, and I appreciate you, Tiny Cooper. And then another person stands up and says, I am Will Grayson, and I appreciate you, Tiny Cooper. And another person, I appreciate you. I'm Will Grayson III, and my grandfather and I both appreciate you. And Grayson comes out of the backstage, and he goes, I am Will Grayson, and I also appreciate you, Tiny Cooper. And Jane comes out and she's like, I am not Will Grayson, but I appreciate you, Tiny Cooper. And the entire troupe of actors all come and hug Tiny Cooper and then lift him up, and he just has this smile on his face, and it's like he's floating. And that's how the book ends. And if I'm 100% honest, I would have liked a little more. I just wanted Will and Tiny to talk and be a little bit more of that 100% happy. Like, I know they're never getting back together. That's fine. But just a little more would have been appreciated. But I understand. And that says something, because I went from absolutely hating this book to wanting to read another chapter, or at least another few pages. So, yeah, my thoughts on this book overall are, I don't know. There are parts of it that I liked. There are parts of it I did not like. There are parts of it I loved. There are a lot of parts that I despised entirely. And there's parts of this that just still, like, piss me off to extreme degrees. And then there are parts that just, hit. And the entire time I'm reading this, I kept having to stop every few pages because I would have entire flashbacks to my life in high school. Both the good parts of high school and the I never want to remember this ever again parts of high school. And just, it really resonated to me because I am both Will Grayson's and Tiny Cooper, minus the homosexuality. I'm all these things. I am antisocial. I am depressed. I am flamboyant. Sometimes I want to do good things and help people, but I'm also very self-centered. It's like, I don't know if I've ever come across a book that spoke to me so much. And I've had books that represented my life better, but didn't speak to me as much as this one seems to. And I'm really happy and pissed off and confused, and I'm everything. This book is an experience for me. It's not a book. It's an experience. And so like there's the things I disliked. The writing, or at least the structure of some of the writing, the choosing to do lowercase pisses me off. The simplicity of the story. This is a very simply written book, which is very good if you're a first-time reader, like a lot of people that tend to pick up John Green books are. But if you're someone who has read for a while and has read a lot of books, this is a lot more like a kid's book. And I didn't like the characters in the beginning, but I liked all of them by the end. Like, I love Jane throughout. Jane is probably my favorite character. But I also grew to love Tiny. Tiny started out for me as someone who's a little bit unrealistic, and then I remembered that I know people like this. I did theater for 10 years. I know these people. These people were my friends. Sometimes. Other times I hated them. So, again, I'm like Will Grayson. And I grew to like both Will Graysons. I still sort of hate the depressed gay Will Grayson, but I at least understand and appreciate him a lot better. And I grew to really like Will Grayson. And I liked some of the supporting cast. We didn't get to a lot of Gideon, but what little we got was pretty good. I really felt for Will's mom. Because there's a good level of subtext from her character where we didn't get to experience a lot of it, but I wanted to kind of know. Like, there's a point towards the end where Will is like, is it ever okay to cheat on somebody? And the way the mom reacts is like that it's happened to her. Or that she cheated. And she says she didn't. And she said his dad didn't, which doesn't really answer the reason for why she reacted so strongly. But it's like, it's that, the kind of, she's a hardworking mom trying to keep her son happy and fed, and he, thankfully, by the end, stops being to her and tells her he truly appreciates her and all that stuff. And it's like, she's like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, yes, but he still has to say it. And yeah, because that pissed, I like that was really, like, I was so certain I was never gonna like that character. That would seem like a mountain you could never come back from. And I'm kind of shocked that they managed to do it. There was a lot of use of songs as filler or as subtext for things that were going on, but it was always kind of pointless. And because it's not songs you recognize, it's all Tiny Cooper songs, and I like, eh. I just kind of scanned through those. Those didn't speak to me in any way, shape, or form. Someone recommended the audiobook for this when I was going through and trying to remember stuff and get the details 100% right. Because even, like, I literally finished the book yesterday and I'm already forgetting most of the middle. And they were like, you should listen to the audiobook, but they have this bad problem of having the IMs just being said every time. And it's like, yeah, no, I've heard of that. I can see that being a big griping thing, but I'm kind of interested to listen to the audiobook now. Maybe I'll not have such a strong reaction. Because, yeah, this literally took me through every single part of my high school experience. And that's impressive. That's something I don't want to think about if I can help it. Especially some of those parts. And that really hit every part of that high school experience. I what would I rate this book? I honestly don't want to give this book a rating, and I'm like, if I had to, I would give it a 3.5. I give it a, yeah, it's like, honestly, I give it a 3 out of 5. It's like, I love parts of it, and I hate parts of it so much that I can just barely give it a passing grade. It's like, it's an experience, and if it's an experience that sounds good to you, you might enjoy this. I'm still, yeah, I get the feeling that the name Will Grayson will be a trigger word for me for a few months after this, where I'm just gonna, like, I was at a restaurant when I was finishing up the last few pages on this book, and I heard the party next to me saw the book and were talking about it, and the girl who'd read it was praising the book and how great it was, and I had to fight the urge to just interject and get in the friend's face, and I'm like, no, this book is really badly written. It is not that great. Until it is. It's so... I'm so conflicted. Which is a strength, honestly. Like, how many books can I say that I've ever had this much of a guttural reaction to? And I'm like, the only one I can think of is Looking for Alaska, but that was 100% negative. Whereas this is so split on it. Yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna read any more John Green. I'm like, I've seen 2 of the movies based off this. I saw Fault in Our Stars, which is fine. The movie was pretty good. I imagine the book is good, but I also believe that anyone could really write a good romantic story between 2 people on their deathbed or suffering from fatal diseases. I think anyone could write a good version of that because it's auto drama. And I watched Paper Towns, which I found extremely boring, and I doubt I would ever want to read. So, like, the only, like, I don't want to read Fault in Our Stars because that book, even though the film was alright, I didn't make me want to read the book. I don't want to read Paper Towns, so that just leaves an abundance of Catherines. Maybe someday, not anytime soon. So yeah, happy reading, y'all.